The Dominion had stood for 11,000 years. 11,000 years of war, conquest, subjugation, and silence from the stars. Every civilization that had dared to challenge the Dominion's borders had either bent the knee or burned. The Cathera had burned. The Sorvian collective had bent the knee. The Mirati Bloom, those gentle, luminous beings who had once seeded poetry across 17 star systems, had simply ceased. No one challenged the Dominion anymore. That was the rule of the galaxy. That was the understanding. Then humanity arrived. High Marshal Selene stood at the observation deck of the Eternal Verdict, the flagship of the Dominion's first armada, and watched the human fleet drop out of faster-than-light travel with an expression carved from cold stone. She had not expected them to actually come. The ultimatum had been standard procedure, a formality, really. Humanity had established colonies in the Varith Corridor, a sector that bordered Dominion space. The Dominion sent the ultimatum: withdraw within 30 cycles or face annexation. Every species received the same message. Every species complied, or every species died. The humans had sent back a single line. We'll be there in 28 cycles. Save us a seat. Selene had read the message 3 times. Her staff had assumed it was a translation error. Her war council had laughed, nervous laughter, the kind that hides uncertainty behind noise. Now, 28 cycles later, the human fleet hung in space like a challenge that refused to blink. It was smaller than expected. 47 warships. The Dominion's first armada numbered 612. Selene had faced rebellions with more firepower than this. She had crushed them before breakfast. And yet, something about the human formation made the fur along her neck ridge rise. "Marshal," said her tactical officer, Vren, his 4 fingers tracing the holographic display nervously. "Their weapon signatures are active. All of them. They powered up weapons the moment they dropped from FTL. I see it. That's unusual. Most fleets use weapons cold approach as a diplomatic signal." "Humans apparently didn't receive that memo," Selene said quietly. "Open a channel." On the bridge of the Resolute, Strike Commander Ethan watched the Dominion fleet fill his screens like a metal storm frozen in time. 600 ships. Give or take. He'd known the numbers. He'd studied every piece of intelligence Earth's analysts could scrape together. He'd run the simulations 800 times. He knew the casualty projections. He knew the survival odds. He'd come anyway. Because Earth hadn't sent him here to win a fair fight. Earth had sent him here to send a message. "Sir," said Lieutenant Kowalski from the comm station. "Dominion flagship is hailing us." "Put her through." The holographic display bloomed with the image of High Marshal Selene, tall, gray-furred, with eyes like polished obsidian and the bearing of someone who had never once been told no and believed it. She wore 600 years of Dominion authority like armor. Ethan leaned back in his command chair and crossed one leg over the other. "Commander." Selene's voice was measured, precise. She spoke in the Dominion's trade tongue, and the translator rendered it into flat English. "You are outnumbered 13 to 1. You are inside Dominion-claimed space. You have powered weapons in the presence of a sovereign fleet. I will give you one opportunity to explain this before I consider it an act of war." Ethan was quiet for a moment. "It's not an act of war," he said. "It's an introduction." Selene's obsidian eyes narrowed slightly. "An introduction. We're humanity. We live in the Varith Corridor. We've been there for about 60 years, built 14 colonies, terraformed 3 moons, and we have no intention of leaving." He said it the way a man might describe his morning commute, straightforward, uncomplicated, slightly bored. "We got your ultimatum. We thought we'd come discuss it in person." "Discuss it?" Selene's ears flattened against her skull. "You brought 47 warships to discuss an ultimatum. We brought 47 warships because we weren't sure if you were the kind of people who listen to words without first seeing that the person speaking them isn't afraid. Ethan tilted his head. Are you? Silence stretched between the two fleets like a wire pulled taut. In 11,000 years, no one had spoken to a Dominion High Marshal like that. Celine felt something she had not felt in a very long time. She felt interested. What followed was not the battle that the Dominion's War Council expected, nor the immediate surrender the Council had privately assumed would occur once the humans saw the full measure of what stood against them. What followed was 3 hours of the most unusual diplomatic exchange in Dominion history. Ethan laid it out plainly. Humanity had no interest in conquest. Humanity had no interest in the Dominion's internal politics, its ancient grudges, its 11,000-year bureaucratic machinery. But humanity had colonists in the Varith corridor, people who had built homes, raised children, buried their dead in alien soil and called it sacred. And humanity had a particular, deeply ingrained, and frankly inconvenient habit. They did not abandon their people. You have to understand, Ethan said, spreading his hands, it's almost embarrassing how hardwired this is for us. Every civilization you've ever dealt with had a point where the math became simple, survival of the majority over the few. We've tried to reach that point. Genuinely. Our strategists model it all the time. And then someone's mother is on one of those colonies, and suddenly the math gets very complicated. Celine studied him. You are describing an evolutionary weakness. We've been told that. Ethan smiled, and it didn't reach his eyes. By people who aren't around to repeat it. The War Council reviewed the battle readiness assessments that night. What disturbed them was not the human fleet's weaponry. Though the weapons were formidable, humanity had apparently spent its entire development cycle optimizing for hitting things very hard from very far away, which a Dominion weapons analyst described in her report as philosophically concerning. What disturbed them was the crew manifests. The humans aboard those 47 ships were volunteers. Every single one. There had been no conscription, no mandatory service. These were people who had looked at the numbers, 13 to 1, 600 warships, the Dominion fleet that had ended the Mirati bloom, and raised their hands. One of the junior council members, Perith, asked the question no one else would voice. Why would they come? Celine stared at the crew manifests for a long time. Because the colonies are theirs, she said finally. And something in them does not recognize the concept of a threat large enough to matter. That's irrational. Yes. Celine set down the manifest. 11,000 years, and I have never once encountered irrational. I am beginning to think we have been asking the wrong species to fear us. The negotiation concluded on the 41st hour. The Varith corridor colonies would remain human. The Dominion would establish a formal border. Humanity would respect Dominion's sovereign space. There would be an exchange of diplomatic envoys, a first in Dominion history with a species that had not first been conquered. As the channel closed, Vren approached Celine at the observation deck. Marshal. You're letting them keep the colonies. Yes. The Council will say we showed weakness. Celine watched the human fleet, 47 ships, powered weapons, not 1 degree of yield in their formation throughout the entire conversation, begin to pivot toward home. The Council, she said, has never seen a species that doesn't flinch. She was quiet for a moment. We have spent 11,000 years teaching the galaxy that we are the most dangerous thing in the dark. She turned from the viewport. I think we may need to revise that assessment. Vren said nothing. Outside, the Resolute led its fleet away, not in retreat, not in escape, but in the easy, unhurried movement of a predator returning home after making its point. The Dominion watched them go. And for the first time in 11,000 years, the Dominion wondered if perhaps the galaxy had been waiting, quietly, patiently, for someone who simply hadn't gotten the message that they were supposed to be afraid. Humanity had entered the Dominion. And hadn't hesitated for a single second.